Welcome back to Tabletop Salt. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to be having a look at Chaos, specifically Emperor's Children and World Eaters. Now, it's been a number of years since we've actually had the Thousand Sun and Death Guard forces come out with their individual codexes. I think about 4 years to be specific, maybe even coming up to 5 in the case of Thousand Suns by the end of the year. And it's been a bit unusual that these two got their individual codexes and demon primarchs, but we haven't seen anything go further with these two. And I thought it'd be quite nice because we'd see that there's a bit of a format when they do get updated, that you usually see sometimes some HQs, but you see the marine base units get updated, along with a cult-like unit, you know, whether it's be Poxwalkers or Zangors, and then you usually get Terminators on top of them. And if you're very lucky, like the Death Guard, you also get Demon Engines added on top, which unfortunately for the Thousand Suns they did not. But I thought it'd be nice to speculate what sort of glorious things that the Emperor's Children and World Eaters might get if they got a Codex. And just for the Chaos fans, let's speculate away. Let's start off by looking at the Emperor's Children. So their overall rule at the moment is their idea of perfectionists. So Emperor's Children already have flawless perfectionist rule, which means that they strike first sort of in combat, which is fine. I think with the units that I'll be mentioning, that I will be speculating on, this will be actually even better, because they will be more combat orientated. This is due to Emperor's Children, though they do love their noise marines, they also take great pride in combat. Look at Lucius, for instance. Now, if you go purely Emperor's Children, what would you get that has to be sort of comparative to command protocols, contagions of Nurgle, power from pain? What bonus do you get for going a purely Emperor's Children detachment? Part of me leans towards the idea of 6s to hit, automatically wounds, maybe only in combat, as ranged might be too good. Just an idea, but something like that. It's simple like the Nurgle Contagions, which is the -1 toughness in a range, very good ability, but nowhere as complex as the Necron command protocols. Of course, we should mention the Demon Primarchs, Fulgrim. So cannot have Emperor's Children without your Primarch. The sad tale of Fulgrim is chronicled well within the Horus Heresy, from his possession and corruption, and the beheading of a friend. However, there have been numerous sightings lately of a being that fairly resembles Fulgrim in terms of his description within his Demon Primarch. So through various books, notably in Psychic Awakening, plus with Guilliman's return, Fulgrim must be delighted at the opportunity to finish the job. Got to get your Primarch kill even higher. Probably the teasers of Fulgrim put me more speculative towards Emperor's Children more than anything, that they may become a fully developed codex. He's been hinted at plenty of times, and I'm sure that there must be some consideration if you're going to hint at Fulgrim that many times, whether he is going to make an appearance. Now I'm also going to look at HQ additions. Let's start with special characters. Now Lucius, this is kind of important to mention him, as he is the only Chaos character, apart from Forge Worlds, that I believe has not had a current update. Even Karn had his a few years ago, it must be about 6 or 7 years ago, but really Lucius is the one that's probably the most dated now, with Abaddon being updated, Ahriman, Typhus, etc. All of them are all rocking new models. I think if we see Emperor's Children, no doubt we'll see a new Lucius model, and I'd be very interested to see that. Now I'm going to mention Fabius. Me and David fought about this quite a bit. David says he should be included in the Emperor's Children Codex. I sort of disagree. Bile is a true free agent of chaos, not really to the gods, but to his own scientific needs. And he should be available to any chaos faction, except maybe one including Typhus. Typhus is not happy with him at the moment. Note the War of the Spider is a great story, highly recommend that you give it a read, but certainly Typhus, if he did everything he could to get his hands on Fabius and failed, I don't see them being able to be fielded in the same army. If you include Typhus and Mortarion in a detachment, or even Magnus and Ahriman, I'm sure the greatest worst surgeon in the universe can be accepted by Fulgrim. So we're going to have a look at, HQ additions, just the general characters. Now, Thousand Suns did not get so many HQ additions, but Death Guard got loads. When it comes to Emperor's Children HQs, we need to see their limitations first, as there probably will be a few, like the Thousand Sons and Death Guards. I imagine Dark Apostle, Master of Execution, Exalted Champion, Lord of Discordant, Master of Possession, Warpsmith may be missing. Some of this could be down to lore reasons, but mainly just down to the trait of Thousand Sons and Death Guard not getting access to units like these. We can hope that Emperor's Children will get replacements like Death Guard and not so limited like Thousand Sons. Regular characters, let's have a look at the idea of Lord of Executions is sound, but for Emperor's Children I think it would be something closer to Master of Dueling, or something where it's the idea of perfecting the art of one-on-one combat in a way. I mean, not as good as Lucius, but you get the idea that this character should be about taking on single combat, possibly, when it comes to targeting a character, they get plenty of rerolls, may offer debuffs to characters, etc. But it's the art of dueling which I really like rather than executions that seems more fitting to Emperor's Children. A support character for Noise Marines that could work in a few ways, let's call them the Maestro of the Cacophony, that's just a name I came up, but they should maybe offer fallback and fire similar to the Necron Warden, like the Necron Warden, be armed with an orchestral weapon, some large sound-based weapon would be fantastic. Or allow Noise Marines to fire an extra shot or an additional AP, something to help with their ranged capacity. I think that sort of idea of a Necron Warden would fit in with a Noise Marine based HQ support unit. That would be fantastic. Another one I would like to see is a support character similar to the Tallyman from the Death Guard Codex. Not a duelist, but maybe one that's forging superior war gear or craft. Choose an Emperor's Children unit, add one to hit for a turn, or maybe one that offers a different ability based on the unit supporting. I'm going to mention a few different units coming up in a second, but if you imagine this unit would, support Noise Marines with a certain unit ability, but then another unit you might offer them in a different way, which would be a great advantage. I did mention Tallyman. I'm going to say they obviously don't get the 7 rule that Tallyman quite gets, but the +1 to hit seems like a fantastic rule that I think could work as a general sporting unit. Next comes the Terminator variants. This is inspired specifically from, obviously Thousand Sons got Scarab Occult, Death Guard even got 2 different types of Terminators, so what would Emperor's Children get? I think looking at Forge World and some lore, we would get Phoenix Terminators. This could be a truly remarkable unit. The Forge World versions of these are pretty good, but this unit could be one of the most resplendent units in the game. This unit should epitomise the look of Emperor's Children, very different to some of the other Terminator units, certainly from Blightlord Terminators or even regular Terminators. Whether the unit still exists, I'm not sure lore-wise whether they're still around, but I'm pretty sure they should be, but it seems like an obvious choice for the Emperor's Children. They should keep the regular stats of Terminators, though we know they are getting updated or inevitably are going to be updated. However, they should be more focused on combat, possibly it can be argued all realms of combat. So I cannot rule out ranged weapons per se, but I think they'd be more associated to close combat. Possibly they could be the Blightlord version of Terminators, and then Phoenix Guards Terminators would be similar to Death Shroud. Either way, I love the Forge World look with the spears. They may not hit as hard, but should be excellent at debuffing in combat. Matched with flawless perfection rule of attacking first, I imagine they could be a fearsome and stunning unit. Let's look at Astartes options. We currently see with Emperor's Children that there is an obvious Astartes option in Noise Marines, and that would be an essential for Emperor's Children. I think, however, they need to have a sizable update to their models and also to their war gear. I imagine Noise Marines, specifically the Sonic Blasters, to work more like Tau Breacher team weapons, where they have 3 profile options that get more intense as they get closer to their opponent. Keep in mind, Breachers are not used as often as you need to get up close and personal for full effect, and Tau do not usually want that, but a unit of Noise Marines may not be too shy at getting closer to their opponent in ranged combat to get absolute, harder hitting attacks in range, but also they wouldn't mind close combat as well, possibly. I also think the Blastmaster needs a slight update with D3 shots and D3 damage. It's a little bit random. I would not be surprised in seeing it becoming heavy 2 and 2 damage solid, while the Assault D6 version will almost likely stay the same as it is at the moment. I would also be easy to justify a long-range unit similar to Havoc's to this, with the most elaborate sonic weapons possible. This is an area Thousand Sons and Death Guard truly struggle. They don't have that many long-range weaponry, and I think it would be good to have the Astartes option of Noise Marines have a Havoc unit or some kind of long-range sonic weapon that would be excellent for long-ranged combat. Lastly, there's also another unit to mention, Forge World, Palatine Blade Squad, and I think it is essential that Emperor's Children do have an Astartes unit that is possibly troops dedicated to combat. After all, their Legion trait sort of focuses on it. They could have, again, an array of different weapons from power swords to halberds. David mentioned he thinks that they should feature jump packs, which initially I had my doubts on, but wings is sort of a singular wing is sort of a heraldry of Emperor's Children, and has certainly hurt a lot of Blood Angel players to see other Chaos units have winged heraldry on them. So maybe there is a thing to have on jump packs with them. It's debatable on that one whether they should or should not have them. I don't see a reason not to. Jump packs have not been in as large favour these days anyway, but if they were winged units, I mean, part of me just wants to split Blood Angel players on that one. I don't know if it'd make entire sense, but it could look glorious, and Emperor's Children do like to look good. In terms of cult options, we do have the Slangor Fiend Bloods, which I believe were just introduced recently in Age of Sigmar, and certainly feel like a natural fit to maybe make their way into 40k, as well as similar to a Zangor option, which would be nice as well. The only thing I'd mention is that their size looks vastly bigger to Zangor, so maybe they would be an elite option rather than a troop. Perhaps we will see a smaller version as well. Cult unit that is more than about their own pleasure than martial prowess seems a bit more difficult to say. I'm struggling to imagine a way you might find a cultist unit and convert them into more being Emperor's Children, but I think if we had a Zangor equivalent that might work out quite as well. I just can't think of one that's kind of like a Poxwalker equivalent. In terms of vehicles, we could have some kind of way to, I don't know, demonise the Adeptus Sororitas organ weapons that are more demon engine orientated. I just think that, with Adeptus Sororitas using their organ weapons, to fire rockets, maybe a big massive sonic weapon would not be out of the question. Mauler Fiend and Forge Fiend and even Defiler seems less likely to be used in Emperor's Children. Just a bit ugly if I was to say anything else. Though I recognise conversions are a thing, but I think if you're going to have demons infused in engines to serve the Emperor's Children, then the engines themselves should be resplendent and radiant. Next up, let's have a look at World Eaters, quite different to Emperor's Children, where they want to be resplendent and perfectionists of combat. World Eaters just want to get the job done and rip their opponents apart. So looking at the army, their current rule is the +1 attack when they charge, which is kind of fine in all honesty. Maybe could be a little bit better. It's one I would say needs to be rethought of, but it wouldn't be one I'd be completely opposed to against. However, what would be the bonus you would get if you went a pure World Eaters army? So there seems to be a sort of obvious no-brainer here, and that is Blood Tithes. This was a system in 7th edition for Khorne Daemonkin, where for each kill you or your opponent made, or when your character or your opponent's character die in a challenge, I believe this is the correct way of gaining them, you gain a point which you can spend for army-wide buffs. You can spend all the points at once, in which you do any points left over or wasted, or you can save those points up for another turn and maybe get a bigger bonus. So whether to spend early and get a smaller bonus or save up and get something large. This range from 1 point gives you all your units Adamantium Will, easier to resist Psychers. All units getting 5 up Feel No Pain, 5 up Ignore Wounds, to even adding free units like Blood Letters, or at their maximum you can have a character turn into a Demon Prince or Bloodthirster. Think of how Bloodthirsters appeared, I believe, in the old Dawn of War, the first one. No doubt it would need an update. GW is not into free units as much, but a system that is done well could do amazing. I highly suggest it gets beta tested first, with the community, but I think the Blood Tithe system for World Eaters would be a great way to give them an army-wide rule and maybe replace Psychers in a lot of ways. So we've got to obviously address the Demon Primarch Agron. The Rage monster himself would actually not be too surprising to return, seeing as before Gathering Storm he was the most active, I think, of the Demon Primarchs in actually personally attacking much of the Imperium, though I believe he did suffer quite a defeat that may explain other parts of him. Then Magnus and Mortarion came back and did their thing, Fulgrim being hinted at, and it seems that Angron has been very quiet. But if he did return, we would see a combat character the likes that 40k may not be ready for. Interesting enough, I remember way back when, do not ask me when, but it was a long time ago, Angron actually got rules in a White Dwarf, I believe, or a supplement, and you can look that up on his rules. Although they do seem quite underwhelming by today's standards, the game has shifted a lot. The only thing I would say, I do believe he did suffer quite a bit of a defeat at one point, but so did Magnus, I believe, as well, way back when. So, yeah, Angron coming back, totally plausible, but because he hasn't been mentioned or even hinted at so much, it's difficult to say. HQ additions, special characters. We already have our combat character in Karn and another support in Zufar the Impaler when it comes to Forge World. I don't know World Eaters well enough to mention another character, like named character, possibly one made up to add additional lore, possibly one less enraged by the Butcher's Nail at the start of the game, but as the game goes on and the rage builds up, the profile changes. Something that may be interesting, but I don't think we should maybe focus on special characters here. Let's have a look at the additional HQ units they could get. When it comes to World Eater HQs, we need to see their limitations, and there is a few, like Thousand Suns and Death Guard. I imagine Dark Apostle, Exalted Champion, Lord Discordant, Master of Possession, all Sorcerers, and Warpsmiths may be missing. This could be lore-wise, it could, it would not make, any sense to have Sorcerers, and it also could be their temperament might not be suitable in the case of Dark Apostle. So the alternatives, and I hope like Death Guard, and they don't get few like Thousand Suns. Firstly, let's have a look at Lord of Executions. Now, I didn't say that might go away. I'd say it actually fits in quite well with World Eaters. It would be fine. Maybe change the name to fit in better. I'd like to see an absolute blender character though, designed to take out numbers of models or switch up for maximum damage, offering zero buffs to units about them. They are purely there for the damage. Simply put, this could be a dangerous character at every level. I want them to be a bit like the Nightbringer, but the Nightbringer's use, a lot of it comes out of the fact that they can only suffer a certain amount of damage, and this is all still quite possible. Maybe this unit could only suffer a certain amount of damage a turn or a phase, and that they cannot benefit from Lookouts, or maybe they've got Reckless Regard or something, but an absolute dangerous character that offers zero buffs to any units around them, and maybe, as said, doesn't benefit from Lookouts, but your opponent has to be very careful of them because they will absolutely cause untold destruction. We've got to look at Dark Apostle replacement. In my mind, it should be a unit filled with rage that can execute a model. Friendly unit die automatically, though they can have the option of attacking an enemy one. Possibly make a single attack in the command phase, kill the model, and this gives a unit nearby an absolute amazing buff around them. Basically, you've got to spill the blood, and when they do, the units around them get a big benefit. Something like the Canoptic Plasmites for Necrons, or maybe a bit like the Taliman, that you get a bit of a benefit, whether it be you get a command point back, or maybe that the execution from this model adds one to your Blood Tithe points just for killing a single model. That might be very good. I just feel that the Rage temperament doesn't fit the Dark Apostle, but there's plenty of ways to add many bonuses to the World Eaters that might be very beneficial. Next up, we're going to have a look at Warp Hunter. Better name might be needed. A unit that fuels the rage of Khorne to those who harness the power of the warp. This should be a slightly defensive unit, though not sure how maybe, one Deny the Witch ability would be kind of handy, or similar to Shadows of the Warp from Tyranids, where you get a -1 to cast around them. However, they should be okay in combat, like all World Eaters should be, but against Psychers they should be able to maybe reroll hits, reroll wounds, possibly extra damage or unmodified wound rolls of 6. I think if you gave all these benefits, Then Psyker units such as Grey Knights or Thousand Suns or Demons, where nearly everything has the Psyker keyword, then it might be a step too far. But against a character, it feels kind of warranted. This could possibly replace the Master of Executions, but I feel this anti-Psyker unit that's designed that wants to hunt down the heads of Psykers, but also, disrupts them around them, would be an excellent addition for World Eaters. Lord Discordant replacement, Lord of Chaos on Juggernaut of Khorne. I want it back, you want it back. The Lord in the Start Collecting Slaves to Darkness is an amazing mounted model, and it just shows the capabilities they've got. Now I know there is a current Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut model out there, I believe it's for Age of Sigmar, but I could be wrong, which is fine. But maybe a 40k update would be truly fantastic. I would love to see it, and I think it would fit well in the World Eaters. Terminator variant, Red Butchers. We've got a stratagem to help out models there, but there's also the models in Forge World as well that, essentially hint to this. Being Strength 5 sounds about right, and I would say 3 attacks sounds about right for these Terminators as well, along with being able to fight twice. We know that Death to the False Emperor is likely going, so extra attack to me is mandatory. They should also have plenty of weapon options, not as many as Plague Marines possibly, because that is a crazy amount, but dual wielding chain axes for plenty of attacks, and maybe one carrying a massive chain axe for huge damage swings, that sort of idea. In the Astartes options, we've obviously got Khorne Berserkers, are the obvious troop option, badly in need of an update in models, same as the other Cult Marines, get them updated nice like them. Stats arguably are fine, but need that 2 wounds. Weapon options are absolutely essential. I will say they can still keep their bolt pistol, possibly, maybe drop the plasma pistol, but for sure need their dual wielding chain axe options. I know you can currently take them in the Codex, but the models themselves don't actually have that option, I believe. Or other weapon options, essentially we also need that another massive chain axe for huge damage swings. I mean, Plague Marines have their giant axe, can't let them have the bigger axe against World Eaters. World Eaters need an absolute sizable axe and dual wielding as well to cause absolute carnage. We also need to talk about range. Now, when it comes to Thousand Suns and Death Guard, there is next to no option for long range warfare for their infantry. I think Death Guard do have a bit for their demon engines. Now, World Eaters, this is a tricky one because if there's any faction that may not like range warfare, World Eaters kind of fit in the top bracket of that. However, blood can be spilt in many ways, so though I think that there should be restrictions on flamer options maybe, I would like to see things like heavy bolters, Reaper chain cannons, missile launchers seem like an okay option to spill the blood. I think some might be opposed to this idea, but I also like a bunch of World Eaters with heavy bolters shredding their opponent apart. What I'm saying is at the moment World Eaters can have Havocs. Kindly keep that the same, maybe with some weapon restrictions, but I'd still think there's many ways that World Eaters could have these ranged ones, and I'd love to see them just with heavy bolters moving across the field causing carnage. Cult option, well, Khorngors, bring them back, sorta. I actually partly do not know if they would fit in with World Eaters as much, but I know there is a history. I think they are slightly easy to justify, mutations in the population that have uncontrollable rage and have mutated to be part beast and part man. Could even have bigger ones to work instead of Zangar Enlightened. These absolute hulking monsters would be really good as a sort of another elite or HQ for these Khorngors. Cultists obsessed with combat to cheat plenty of attacks. I think Poxwalkers, 2 attacks, ignore wounds and 6s, bar 6-inch movement and not immune to morale. Rage-induced cult units sounds like a bit of a no-brainer. Next up, we're going to look at demon engines. Though Thousand Suns did not get demon engines, Death Guard did, and plenty of them. And so what would World Eater demon engines look like? Well, we already have some. Lord of Skulls and the Brass Scorpion. However, some smaller ones would be good. I almost imagine the Mauler Fiend and Forge Fiend seem like okay options in a way. They seem far more suitable than, say, the Thousand Suns having them. However, what would specific World Eater demon engines look like? I can see this would, almost involve a lot of chains. Demons kept in machines with rage, where when they're unleashed upon the battlefield, they have to unchain them and they absolutely bound across there, the chains whipping across the place and shredding their opponents. Bit like Lasher Tendrils, but I don't know in that one how you'd make them so different in that sense. But I like this idea of change just picking out people, because these were the change to force these demon engines down because they're so rage infused. However, I can also see a successfully changed version of this with a large cannon on their back. Think of the Hell Cannon from Fantasy, which only just found out was discontinued, and that really hurts. But an engine that wants to get into combat but is so chained down to the ground that it builds up rage and anger inside it that it then must unleash it from a giant cannon on its back into a very punishing shot. I think for demon engines that would be absolutely cool. I mean, the Hell Cannon was a fantastic one from Fancy, as I'm sad it's gone, but that idea behind it seems to fit well with World Eaters. So that is it for my speculation video, and I have to say it was a lot of fun writing it. I'm a huge Chaos fan, generally the bad guys are my favourite in the 40k universe, and it was just interesting to have a look at the previous ways that the Thousand Sons and Death Guard got updated and how that might influence the World Eaters and Emperor's Children. What do you guys think? How do you think they may be updated? Will they ever get updated is the big question. I am very, very interested. I find it hard to believe that with all the hints towards Fulgrim, and certainly with Guilliman coming back, there's a lot of conflict that could be shared there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Check us out on social media to see what we're working on at the moment, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.